So hello everyone, I just like to start by saying this video's question or theory isn't super literal, as if no one's pointed Ash, well, he wouldn't be able to become a trainer. And I'd also like to say that I've always seen all over YouTube, but if, for example, Vegeta what if Lance sponsored Ash and the infamous collab from Ronin Charizard and plus Ultraman. What if Giovanni sponsored Ash, which is arguably one of the best Pokemon what ifs I've seen on YouTube, and I'm saying that honestly. But I've never seen anyone ask the question if nobody official in the Pokemon world sponsored Ash. If there's someone who asked that question or made the video about that, I apologize if I just took your idea without crediting you. But anyway, time to go on in my story. So in this timeline, Ash wouldn't attend the summer camp, as I personally think, like with many other people, that the summer camp is what really opened up Ash and Ash's family to Oak's family, and also what really got Ash sponsored by Oak, because Oak cared about him and remembered him as that nice kid from the summer camp. So there's also that factor why he decided to support Ash when he was late. Also, just in case this isn't exactly true, I'm going to say that in this story, in order for someone to become sponsored by Professor Oak, they'd have to attend his summer camp, and that's how it's going to work. So since Ash wasn't there, no sponsorship, so Delia would have to essentially go broke to sponsor her son, and she wasn't going to just let Ash become something that he didn't want to do, wanted to let him become a Pokemon trainer. Even though some people might say Oak will help him, in my story that I've came up with, that isn't legal in the Pokemon world, and you have to attend the summer camp in order to be sponsored by Oak. Kinda harsh, but that's kind of the way I've always seen it. Not all the legal stuff, but you know, that's kind of the way I've always seen it. And you have to go to like the summer camp to be sponsored by Oak. So anyway, like I said, Dealer would essentially go broke buying Pokeballs, a trainer card, and an encyclopedia book that Ash can use, as a Pokedex is way too expensive. But the thing is that the encyclopedia book would have all of the Pokemon all over the world, even up to Galar. And it had detailed explanations that were written by all of the Pokemon professors or their assistants. And it was essentially a Pokedex, but it had a lot more information. But the downside was Ash would have to turn pages, while Gary and the others would just have to pull out the Pokedex and scan the Pokemon, and they got the information. So, like I just said earlier, Delia will go broke because of all that, or she'd almost go broke. But I'm pretty sure that Ash's dad is paying some child support and will be able to support her. So I don't think that's a problem. So Delia will go and tell her son to go and catch a Pokemon, as she can't really help him with getting a starter. As then Ash would go out and he would try looking for a Pokemon. But then he'd see a Dratini on the floor, wounded. As then he'd see a female and a male saying, Where's that darn Dratini? We need it. Boss is running tests on it. As then, Ash would immediately run towards it. I would put it in his arms as it was hurt. But then a Zubat and Rattata would come and attack him. Rattata would dig its teeth into his legs with a hyper fan, and the Zubat would use an air slash which would knock back Ash and would hurt him. As then, two Team Rocket grunts would step out and say, "Hey kid, hand over the Dratini or you're gonna regret it. Even though you're a kid, we're not afraid to hurt you if you're not going to listen to us. The boss will cover up whatever will happen to you. So will be a problem on our end." Instead, Ash would make a run for it, like any normal person would in that scenario. He would get dashing intensely, trying to get away from the people and the Pokemon that were behind him. But Ash would run so hard he wouldn't notice that there was a tiny rock in his way. Instead, he would trip and fall. The female Team Rocket Grunt would catch up before her male counterpart, as her male counterpart, being a bit more of a clown, had tripped on a rock like Ash, as he was actually a bit further than her, but he tripped on a rock as he was running similar to how Ash was, so she'd make it there before before her male counterpart. Instead she'd say, "Kid, hand over the Dratini and my Zubat over here won't have to do terrible things to you." And then the male would also come out and then say, "Yeah, and Rattata won't have to continuously chomp on your useless excuse for a body." As then, Dratini would slowly get up as it was getting annoyed that these cruel people that had harassed it were trying to harass the person who saved it. As then, it would completely stand up. As then, Rattata and Zubat would prepare to hit both Ash and Zubat. But then, Dratini and Rage would launch a full power Dragon Rage, which would send the Team Rocket Grunts and their Pokemon would send the Team Rocket Grunts and their Pokemon almost blasting off, but they managed to hit a few stones, so they instead lay locked out on the floor. And Ash would seeing this opportunity, as he was paralyzed in fear at seeing the Rocket Grunts, would quickly get up, as then he would hug Dratini tighter just in case anything happened to it, and then make a run for it once again. He'd make it all the way into Pallet Town, as then he'd show the injured dragon type to his mum, as then he'd say, "Mum, this Pokemon, I can't remember its name, it needs your help, it needs you to heal it." As then Dealer would say, "Oh my god, honey, what happened to you? Got all these bruises and cuts on you. Who did this?" As then Ash would say, "Mum, don't worry about me, worry about this little snake-looking Pokemon over here." As then Dealer would say, "Oh no! Look at that, darling. Ash, hand it to me, and then I'll give you some bandages." As then Ash would say, "Mum, I'm alright. I've had worse. Remember?" As then Dealer would say, "Yeah, but let's just deal with this little one over here." As then the next day, we'd see that Ash would wake up. As then Delia would have finished looking after the Dratini, as the Dratini would have actually gone kind of attached to the Ketchums, as Ash and Delia had stayed up all night looking after it, as Ash couldn't bear the thought of a Pokemon being hurt. So Ash had barely gotten any sleep, but he was still ready to go out on this journey. So then Ash would decide to use the encyclopedia or handbook to check what kind of Pokemon it was, and so they would say that it's a Dratini. Ash would then pull out a Pokeball from his bag, and then he'd open it and would say, Dratini, do you want to be my Pokemon? Do you want to travel with me? Dratini would look at the Pokeball, look at Delia, and then look at Ash. And then he'd realize that this boy had legit saved its life. Saved its life. If he let those bad people take it away, it would have been experimented on and disposed of. We obviously know the bad people to be Team Rocket, but Dratini and Ash and Delia aren't really familiar with the R-raring criminals. So Dratini would then, in his gratitude, jump towards the Pokeball, let itself be captured by Ash, as then Ash would stand back and smile as Dratini was equipped in his party. He would then get out of his house and say goodbye to his mom, as then he'd go back to Route 1. He'd then send out Dratini against Pidgey, as then Pidgey would use a gust, which would knock back Dratini, as then Dratini would use a Dragon Rage, which would knock Pidgey down. Ash, not wanting to hurt it any further, would use a Pokeball and catch it. He would then return Dratini. After that, he would leave to Cerulean City, then to Meridian Forest after taking a quick detour to heal both Pokemon, and then would meet Samurai. Samurai would say that he's been looking for a challenge the entire day, as Ash had actually left a bit earlier than all of the other people, like Gary and the other two people that chose Charmander and Bulbasaur. I mean, yeah, I actually said the right Pokemon. I almost thought I said Squirtle, but we all know that was Gary's Pokemon, so yeah. Ash would have met Samurai and would decide that he wanted to battle him. Samurai would send out Metapod as Ash would send out Pidgey. Pidgey would use Gust, which would knock back Samurai's Metapod, as then Metapod, as it didn't have any moves, and I personally think that Samurai wasn't the smartest trainer, would decide to go for Harley, even though at this point Metapod was about to faint from the gust, but Ash would just ignore the sheer dumb willpower and just keep going on, as then he would call for Pidgey's wing attack, as then Samurai would keep hardening and hardening and hardening, trying to avoid the inevitable fact that his Metapod was going to faint by the hands of Ash's Pidgey, or by the feathers of by the wings of Ash's Pidgey. I don't really know. The fact still stood that Samurai's Metapod was legit done. So even though it kept hardening and hardening and hardening, it was useless in the end, as Pidgey still beat it with a wing attack. But then Samurai's Metapod would actually still be standing, which would shock Ash and Samurai, as he thought it was over for him. As then Pidgey, realizing that he needs to finish the job, as it was kind of just wasting its own time by not getting rid of Metapods, it would use a gust. It would cause Metapod to be consumed in the tornado, as then would be knocked out from the power of the gust, as then Pidgey would fly back next to Ash, as then they'd celebrate, but Samurai would say, "The battle isn't over. I'm far from using my strongest." Instead, he'd send out his pincer, Peter would use a brick break, which would knock back Pidgey, as then Pidgey would use a gust to knock back Pinsir, as then Pidgey would go for a rig attack to knock back Pinsir, as then Pinsir would use a horn attack, as it would then crush Pidgey with its horns. It would continuously crush it with its pincers. It would crush it and crush it and crush it. It would always get to the point where it was about to crush Pidgey's bones, but then Ash would call for a gust before anything could escalate negatively, as then Pinsir would let Pidgey out of its grip as it was very weakened, as then both Pokemon would be fatigued from Pinsir crushing Pidgey and from Pidgey using Gust on Pinsir. It would come down to who would stay up the longest. But ultimately, Pinsir would fall, as Pidgey would still remain the victor. As then Ash would return it and say, "Well done, Pidgey. You really worked hard." As then Samurai would come and congratulate Ash and would say that Ash is quite a strong trainer and that he wants to know which town he's from. As then Ash would say that he's from Pallet Town, and then Samurai would say, "The next trainers that are from Pallet Town, I'm going to beat them so that I can show how strong I am." As then him and Ash would bid farewell, as then Ash would make his way to Pewter City. Ash would meet Brock's dad, Flint, as then Flint would say, "Hello, young man, are you new to Pewter City?" And Ash would say, "Yes, I've actually, like you see, I've just entered the town. I've never been here before, I'm here for the gym badge." As then Flint would say, "Be careful, Brock is quite a skilled trainer. Let me lead you to where the gym is." As then he directs Ash to the gym, as then Ash would walk in. Brock would be meditating there, as then he'd look up and see Ash, as then he'd say, "Hello, young man. Are you here for a challenge?" Even though Brock was still a child, we're just gonna ignore that. As then Ash would say, "Yeah, I'm here for a challenge." As then Brock would say, "Let's get into a battle." As then Ash would use Pidgey against Brock's Geodude. As then Brock would use a rock throw on Pidgey, which would knock it back slightly, as then Pidgey would use a gust to knock back Geodude. Then Geodude would use a smackdown on Pidgey, which would knock it back and out. As then Ash would immediately send out Dratini in response to this, as then he called for Dragon Rage, the only move he knew Dratini had, which would knock out Geodude. As then Brock would send out Onix, as Ash would use Dragon Rage again to knock back Onix for decent damage, as then Onix would respond with a rock tomb, which would knock back Dratini. As then Ash wouldn't know what to do, so he'd pull out the handy book / encyclopedia to see what moves he could also use against Onix. As then Brock would say, "So you're really pulling out your encyclopedia? Wow, I thought you knew what kind of moves your Pokemon had. Oh, I guess I thought too much of you. Okay, Onix, use Earthquake." As then the Earthquake would hit Dratini. As then the rumbling would also disturb Dratini, as there'd still be tremors from the Earthquake. As then Ash, after reading the encyclopedia, would come up with a move for Dratini to use, which would be Dragon Tail, but it would miss, as Dratini had only just first used this move, so it would miss. As then it would finish off Dratini with a rock throw. Onyx would come back to his place in the battlefield, as then Brock would say, "Next time, learn your Pokemon's moves and become a skilled trainer. So when you challenge me, you can actually give me a decent challenge." Ash, annoyed, would run out of the gym, as then Flint would be watching from the windows. As then Flint would say, "I saw the entire battle. You lost because you didn't really know the kind of moves that your Dratini had, and your Pidgey wasn't strong enough to compensate for your clear lack of knowledge of Dratini's moves. As if your Pidgey defeated the Geodude and attacked Onyx, it would have actually given you the win, as the damage from Pidgey might have actually helped you when you sent out Dratini to attack Onyx." As then I should say, "Yeah," and then Flint would also say, "But still, you don't know the kind of moves that your Dratini has, and that's something we need to work on. You need to know the kind of moves that your Pokemon has. So in a battle, you can't just pull out your encyclopedia, as you'll give the opponent an opportunity to strike and knock out your Pokemon." As then Ash, understanding this, would then say, "I guess I should stop using my encyclopedia." As then Grant would say, "Glad we're on the same page, so send out your Pokemon and give me the encyclopedia." As then Ash would send out the Pokemon and give it to Flint, and Flint would just casually chuck it away. As then Ash would say, "What the hell, man? My mom spent a lot of money on that." As then Flip would say, "Don't worry, that thing's expensive, right? It's not that damaged." As then Ash and Flint would begin training. As then Flint would say, "Train your two Pokemon. Tell them to go one-on-one against each other." As then Ash would call for Pidgey to use Gust, which would catch Dratini in the tornado that Gust created. As then Ash would call for Dratini to use Dragon Rage in the Gust tornado, which would then turn the energy dragon-like. As then Dratini would begin to command the tornado. As then slowly by slowly it would become more dragon-like until it became a tornado wrapped in dragon-like energy, which would envelop Pidgey. In the middle of the tornado, Pidgey would evolve from the pressure that it was undergoing, and then it would become a Pidgeotto. From evolving into Pidgeotto, it would use its newfound speed and strength to use a wing attack, but right before it hit, I actually remember a move in the encyclopedia that Dratini could learn, which would be Thunder Wave, as he then paralyzed Pidgeotto using Dratini's Thunder Wave. As then the wing attack would go away, as Pidgeotto couldn't move as he was paralyzed. As then Ash would use a Dragon Tail on his own Pokemon Pidgeotto, which would knock it down. As then Flint would say, "That's enough." As then Ash would return both of his Pokemon. As then Flint would say, "I think you've made your Pokemon stronger by that one training session. So I think it's time that you go and you add one more member to your team, as you might need a stronger or better suited Pokemon against someone like Brock." Then Ash would find a female Nidoran, as then he decided to use Pidgeotto on it. Ash would then call for a wing attack, as then Nidorina would jump on top of Pidgeotto and use a double kick on it, as then Pidgeotto would use Gust, which would knock down the female Nidoran, as then Ash would call for a wing attack, which would hit the female Nidoran and would knock it down. As then, Ash would quickly catch it as Pidgeotto would fly back up. Ash would then go to the gym after healing up his Pokemon and decide to challenge Brock. Once again, as then Brock would say, "It's been an entire day and you think you've improved by a mile? Well, if you lose, it's your problem. See how strong you've really become." As then, Ash would use Nidoran female on Geodude. As then, Brock would say, "Oh, a new addition. Let's hope it's good enough to give you a good challenge." As then, Geodude would use a smackdown on Nidoran female, as the Nidoran would poison it with its poison point ability. As then, Nidoran would use a double kick, which would knock down Geodude, as then the poison would hurt Geodude, which would knock it out. As then, Brock would send out his Onix. As then, Ash would call for a double kick, which would do a decent chunk of damage to Onix. As then, Onix would call for a rock slide, which would knock down Nidoran female. As then, Nidoran female would use a poison sting. As then, Onix would finish it off with an earthquake. Ash would then send out his Utini. As then, Brock would say, "Oh, that one. Utini, is it? I hope it's improved from last time, so you give me a decent challenge." As then, Ash would call for a Dragon Tail to knock down Onix. As then, Onix would use a Rock Tomb on Dratini. As then, she would be knocked down. As then, Ash remember another move from the encyclopedia that some Dratini knew, as he'd risk it and call for an extreme speed would actually hit and knock back Onix, as Onix and Brock were caught off guard. As an Ash would finish off with a Dragon Rage. This would then give Ash the match. As then Brock would say, "Now that was quite a battle. I didn't expect you to perform so well and get so strong in such a short amount of time. Guess I underestimated you." As then Brock would come and give Ash the badge. As then Brock would decide to go outside and congratulate Ash outside and in a better place to breathe in than a confined gym space. But out there, Brock would meet his dad, Flint. As then Flint would say, "Hello, son. I think it's time for you to go and pursue your dreams and finally ready to come back and take over the house as the man I should have been a long time ago." As then Brock would say, "Wait, Dad, what are you doing here?" As then Ash would say, "Wait, you're Brock's dad?" As then Flint would say, "Yes, I am. Didn't you see the resemblance?" As then Ash would say, "Oh yeah, I always saw it all along, but I denied that you two were related, as the way you talked about him like you felt ashamed of something, like you didn't want me to know that he was your son." As then Flint would say, "To be honest, I'm ashamed of how I just walked away and went on a Pokemon journey that was useless because I was too scared to look after my children alone after what happened with Brock's mother going on her numerous adventures." As then Ash would then understand this, and Brock would say, "But still, I don't understand. Me, I'm not even 21 yet, and I still wasn't scared to look after my little brothers and sisters, while you ran away. Why don't you just stay and help us?" As then Oxford Flint would say, Look, Brock, I was scared. I apologize. Should have manned up, took the job, looked after you and your siblings, and then we all could have lived happily as a family. I shouldn't have made that mistake. Now I see that. I apologize, and now I'm ready to look after your siblings and start anew. Brock would then turn fully at his father as he was actually talking to him with his back turned, as he didn't have that respect for his father anymore, but he had just regained a little more respect for his father after what his father just said. As then Brock would say, "So, if you're really going to look after us, you're going to have to do this and do that." As then Brock would go on to say the entire routine of how he looks after his entire family. As then Flint would say, "I understand. Anyway, Brock, go and pursue your dream of becoming a Pokemon breeder or becoming a Pokemon doctor. I don't really remember, but son, go do you. And remember, me and your siblings will always be rooting for you." As then Brock would say, "Thank you, Dad." As then him and Ash would leave to Mount Moon. As then that episode of Mount Moon would go the same. And then Ash would make it to AJ's gym. As then he'd see AJ's gym undefeated, 98 wins, no losses. As then Ash would be determined to make himself the first person to beat AJ and give him his first loss, as he thought that AJ must be a cocky individual to make him to broadcast himself like that. As then AJ would walk out and say, "Oh, hello, are you here to get beaten by me? Are you another person to be squashed by me and my great training methods?" This would annoy Ash, as then he'd say, Who do you think you are? Because you've won against 98 people, you think you're automatically better than me? And Brock over here is a gym leader. Will probably beat you with his eyes closed, even though Brock's eyes are always shut. Let's just ignore that and let's just say that Ash instead said that Brock can beat AJ in his sleep. As then AJ can say, "Oh really? Who do you think you're talking to? You think you're just some kid with a Pokemon League hat and a dead looking outfit who thinks he can beat me. Let's see who's really better. Because I am trained, I'm a professional, and I'm way better than any of you losers. I don't care if that guy's a gym leader, I'm better than you." Instead, he pull out his whip and whip out his Pokemon. Ash would then say, "Hey, what are you doing? First, you're a jerk, and now you're straight up abusing your Pokemon. How worse can you get?" As if AJ would say. "You call this abuse? I'm just whipping them into shape and getting them tough and strong." As then, right in front of Ash, after whipping his Sandshrew, he would go on to hug it and tell it, "Let's beat this guy." This will completely confuse Ash, as then Brock would say, "Ash, this guy clearly does care about his Pokemon. He just has a tough training method." As then Ash would say, "I've had enough of seeing you acting like you're better than everyone else, because you're beating 98 other people who aren't as skilled as you. Now you meet someone who's actually probably your same league. And now it's time for us to battle." As then Ash would send out Dratini against AJ's Sandshrew. Ash would then use extreme speed on Sandshrew, as then Sandshrew would use a slash on Dratini, as Dratini would be knocked back. As then Sandshrew would jump back down As then Ash would go for a Dragon Rage, which would actually be avoided by Sandshrew, and Sandshrew would use a dig and would knock Dratini up, as then Dratini would then use an Iron Tail, as then Sandshrew would counter with a Slash, as then both Pokemon would send each other back, as Sandshrew would dig itself back into the hole after being knocked back by Ash, as then Ash would use a Dragon Rage, which would then knock out Sandshrew, as then Dratini would jump back to Ash's side and then say, Dratini! As then AJ would say, wow, can't believe you beat Sandshrew. And Ash would say, you call yourself undefeated? I've just defeated your strongest Pokemon without breaking your sweat. Send out a second Pokemon. Even though this battle was originally going to be a one-on-one, on a real challenge. AJ getting annoyed and sent out his second strongest, Butterfree. Butterfree would use a Psybeam, which would knock back Dratini, as then Dratini would be confused from the Psybeam, as AJ would then smirk, as then Dratini would hit itself in confusion, as then Butterfree would use Gust on Dratini, then Dratini would be confused, but then use a Dragon Rage to knock back Butterfree, as then Butterfree would finish it off with the Psybeam, as then Ash would send out his Pidgeotto. Pidgeotto would use Wing Attack, which would instantly knock out Butterfree, as then AJ, dumbfounded by how easily Ash beat him, would then say, I understand your point. I was crying myself like I was better than everyone else, and it was stupid. I apologize for how I treated you and for how and the stuff I said about you and your friends. I now see that you're the better trainer than me, but believe me, when we meet in the Pokemon League, it'll be an entirely different story. As then Ash would then go to the Cerulean Gym and bid farewell to AJ. As then, with walking, I would see a red-haired girl talking to her siblings and gloating loudly about how she beat them with only her Staryu, about how she's officially better than her sisters, and that she's more beautiful, and that she is the superior out of the sensational sisters. As then could all be talking about who is better and arguing and saying, no, we went easy on you, Misty, blah blah blah. As then I should say, everyone, I'm here for a gym battle, not here to see you four bicker about who's better, because I'm pretty sure me and my friend over here really don't care. As then Misty would turn annoyed and would say, hey kid, who the hell do you think you are to talk to me and my family like that? And I should say, I'm the person who's going to beat you or any of your sisters in the gym battle. As then Misty would say, I've just knocked out all my sisters with only one of my Pokemon's Staryu. That thing's exhausted, but my strongest Pokemon's Starmie is not. So, what do you say to a one-on-one Starmie versus one of your Pokemon? As then I should say, yeah. As in Misty would smirk, I would think, I'm gonna put this brat in his place. As then everybody would stand back as then the battle would commence between Misty and Ash. Ash would use Nidoran female against Misty's Starmie. This would be a one-on-one. Whichever Pokemon lost would mean the trainer had lost and the superior trainer had won, and the other trainer would have to, if it was Misty, give Ash the badge, and if it was Ash, go to the Pokemon Center and come back another day. As then Ash would use a poison tank on Starmie, which would then knock it back and poison it. As then Starmie would use a psychic, which would launch back Nidoran female. which would blast it onto the wall, blast it onto the ceiling, and then blast it onto the ground. This move being super effective would leave either and female very much wounded and about to faint, but then Misty would use a water pulse. Either female would be even more bruised and wounded, but it would still stand up, showing its full power, as then Misty would say, "This is torture. The thing is so weak and tiny, you're just hurting it." As then she'd chuckle, not chuckle, she's not a psychopath, but she'd then give Ash a look that was like, "I'm better than you and you're stupid." This would make both Ash and Nidoran angry, as then it would begin to glow. As then Nidoran would grow in size, as then it would evolve to Nidoran female, as then it would quickly launch a new move on Starmie, which would be Poison Fang, which would replace Poison Sting, which would then knock back Starmie, as then Starmie would be afflicted by the poison as it couldn't move, as then Ash would say, "Finish it off with a slash, right now." As then Starmie would try and use a water pulse to knock out Nidorina, but Nidorina would easily slash through it and slash right through Starmie, which would then knock it out, as then Nidorina would jump right back to Ash's side, as then they both celebrate from beating Misty. Misty would be dumbfounded, as then she'd fall to her knees shocked. Then she said, I. She stammered, barely able to get her words out. So she said, I had that battle with the bag. How did I lose? As then she'd be dumbfounded that she just lost to Ash. Ash would then say, "That's because I'm the better trainer. And now, any of you, can you please hand me my gym badge?" As then the Sensational Sisters would walk from behind them and say, "Looks like you still got much to learn, Misty." As then they'd say, "You're bested by some kid from Planet Town." As then the Sensational Sisters would say, "Wow, Ash, here's your gym badge. You really are strong. You really show that cocky little sister over there who's the boss." As then Misty would say, "I still beat you through." But then the Sensational Sisters would reveal that their teams were actually weakened by a few other trainers earlier. Okay, I'll see you guys later.